Hello world, it's Lee Kelson coming to you from Maroochydore on the Sunshine Coast on behalf of Invest Sunshine Coast, and I'm here with Phil Reardon from Schoolzine. How are you, Phil?
I'm good, thanks.
That's good. So, Phil, just give us a little bit of your background and then we'll have a talk about Schoolzine and how did you sort of come about into Schoolzine?
Okay. Well, I'm from the UK. I left school, went into the commodity trading markets. So I was a cocoa trader for a few years. About 1988, my brother was over here trading bond markets and was saying, "You got to come over, you got to come over, have a look." So I came over for a 2-week holiday, got a job, stayed in the markets for a number of years, went self-employed in the markets, and then in 1999 they shut the floors down and it all went computerized. Right. So I thought, I'm going to go up to the Sunshine Coast, get away from computers. I don't want to work with anything to do with anything digital. Yeah. Came up and I was going to trade into the European markets, but the internet access here was so poor that it just couldn't be done. And I saw a course at the local University of Sunshine Coast. I went down there, did a year's course in multimedia, came up with some ideas, had a couple of false starts, then was I had a company that was producing.
So just tell us about the false starts. What were the false starts?
Okay, so started a multimedia company with someone I'd met at a course. Didn't really get on that well, so we decided to go our own ways. Took half the business, which was producing media for the craft market, out and started using email marketing, and bumped into a principal one day. And that principal was struggling to communicate, and I said, "Oh, have you ever tried using an email marketing system?" Took an email marketing system that we were white labeling at the time into the school, see if it'd make a difference. And it made a big impact straight away. Right. And this was 12 years ago, they were still using paper. Yeah. And but what we realized was that wasn't their problem. The problem was that the person tasked with the job was someone in the admin room, and it was generally a female, not being derogatory to females. She was 55 years old on average, and had basic computer skills. Yep. So it was a task that was challenging for her. She was very time poor because they were band-aiding knees, looking after the principal, dealing with parents. And so we decided to take that laborious task of formatting the content, which was taking her days, yep, away from her, and build a publishing engine to do it for them. Right. And it was kind of born from that. And we've built it out into a pretty big platform now. It handles all digital media going out from the school, whether it be the website, the app, or newsletters. Yep. Yeah, we're just growing and growing and growing it.
And you've grown it all from here at the base in Maroochydore?
We started off at the Innovation Centre of the Sunshine Coast. Yep. We were there for, you're certainly supposed to be there for about 2, but I think we were there for about 9 years. There's no such thing as a 2-year.
I was going to say, that's a long incubator.
Yeah, there's no such thing as 2 years anymore. It's 10 or nothing. Yeah. And we moved out probably 3 years ago, right, into this centre here.
Right, fantastic. And so since then, how many people are you employing here on the coast?
We employ around about 45, 46. Right. Yeah.
And you've expanded into international markets now? You're in the UK?
Yep, we've opened an office 2 years ago in Stratford-upon-Avon in the Midlands of the UK. Got about 3 staff there, and they're ticking along nicely. Yep. And we've just opened up an office in Bangkok to handle Southeast Asia.
Right, okay. And how many schools have you got on board here in Australia?
We're up to about 1,000 in Australia, okay, so pretty good number, about 10% of the market.
Yeah. And competition, other competition coming into this market, particularly in Australia or other parts of the world?
Well, competition can be anything from a lady that sits on the PNC that is a graphic designer, yeah, all the way through to Facebook. Other companies around the world, there's definitely competition in the US, coming out of the US. There's no one that we've found that actually has everything under the one login. Often there's 3 or 4 logins to different pieces of software, but that's going to change.
Yeah.
So.
And so you mentioned that you came up to the Sunshine Coast after the the markets changed and went computerised. Why the Sunshine Coast?
Well, actually, what happened was I took a road trip with my brother, and we went all the way up to Mecca. And on the way back, I actually stopped off at Sunshine Beach, and I got really burnt. I'm a pom and I've white skin, and I only have to look at the sun and I get burnt. And drove up onto Budrim, and it was just a little bit cooler.
Right.
So I thought, oh, this is nice.
Right.
And then drove into Mooloolaba, and it was beautiful. So yeah, I thought this is the spot.
Yeah, fantastic. And so what's next for Schoolzine?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess we just continue to develop out the platform. We want to we want to keep innovating. So we want to keep bringing in new channels for communication into the one platform, and I guess keep expanding overseas. There's 10,000 schools in Australia. There's 32,000 in the UK. There's 130,000 in the US. 1.3 million in India. China's a big market, especially international schools. Yep. So Southeast Asia is going to be predominantly international schools we're looking at. Yep. But we're talking to some of the government departments in Thailand at the moment.
Right. So from the infrastructure perspective on the Sunshine Coast, how long have you actually been on the Sunshine Coast now?
As a company or personally?
Yeah.
Since 2000. So.
Right, so 18 years. So you would have seen some pretty dramatic changes in terms of the new CBD, the new smart city, the recent announcement of the submarine cable coming in.
Yeah. Oh, Sunshine Coast is definitely a good place to set up a business. Right. Cost-wise, it's a lot lower than the big cities. It's a great place to live. It's a great place to bring up kids, so you get that real balance. Two of my kids who were born here, and one was here from a very young age, so they're all Sunshine Coast kids.
One of your kids actually is part of, there is a bit of a relationship here. Young Mecca is part of the Beach City presenter team, based up here on the Sunshine Coast. So for those that have seen the young fellow with the big hair, that's Mecca.
I used to have hair like that a long time ago.
Yeah, sure you did.
I'll get the pictures out.
So I think it's pretty exciting times really on the Sunshine Coast, particularly, I was talking to some people over the last couple of days, obviously, but, the new CBD, the smart city stuff that's going in, and then that submarine cable connection is going to open up a whole raft of opportunities.
Yeah, it's massive. I mean, I heard there were more projects going on the Sunshine Coast than anywhere else in the country.
Yeah, right.
So, the airport, the hospital, that all adds up.
Yeah, fantastic. So, if people want to get in touch with Schoolzine, where's the best place? What's your website?
It's www.schoolzine.com.
Yep. And you're on LinkedIn?
I'm on LinkedIn, Phil Reardon. Just look me up.
Look you up. All right, Phil, thanks very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you again, and all the best with Schoolzine.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.